بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
I would like to, it's my pleasure to welcome you all today to this crucial and beneficial event that we have here. It's about Palestine, Islamophobia, and Zionism, and how they're all connected. Who are our allies? Who are those who work against us? Whether, even if they work against us, even if they have, even if they come bearing gifts, and they come brandishing smiles. So our esteemed lecturers are going to speak about this issue later on. We're going to start, inshallah, with a few ayat from the Quran with Brother Islam Guwaida.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا كبيرا وأن الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة أعتدنا لهم عذابا أليما. ويدعو الإنسان بالشر دعاءه بالخير وكان الإنسان عجولا. وجعلنا الليل والنهار آيتين فمحونا آية الليل وجعلنا آية النهار مبصرة لتبتغوا فضلا من ربكم ولتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب وكل شيء فصلناه تفصيلا. وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا. اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا.
جزاك الله خير. صدق الله العظيم. جزاك الله خير. صدق الله العظيم. Our next up we have our Imam and our teacher, Dr. Saad Guwaida.
السلام عليكم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. وبعد أنا ماليش كلام، يعني معنا الدكتور يعني ده مجاله، لكن هي يعني بعض الأمور اللي أخونا ماهر طلب مني. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يتقبل منك وأن يتقبل من الإخوة القائمين على هذا العمل والإخوة الكوميونيتي بالكامل. أسأل الله أن يتقبل منهم جميعا يا رب العالمين. اللهم آمين اللهم آمين. الكلمة اللي عايز أوجهها يعني حقيقة في شوية حقائق. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى، وأخونا الدكتور حاتم برضو يصلحني فيها لو في مثلا شيء بعض الأمور في كلمتي إن شاء الله، يعني ممكن يعني نبين فيها قيمة القدس وموقف المسلمين من القدس ومن الأقصى. هل هو شيء عادي ان احنا نهتم يعني شيء نهتم بيه زي اي شيء، ولا هو شيء محتاج مننا حقيقة الى وقفة اكثر مما ينبغي ومما نراه ومما يحدث الآن، وبالذات في هذه الأيام. ولا أقول أيها الإخوة وأيتها الأخوات إن الكلام اللي هقوله هذا مش مجرد إنه شيء عادي، لا، ده هذا أصبح واجب، بل إذا كان هناك أكثر من الواجب، يعني لو الواجب أقل من الفرض فهو فرض علينا أن نهتم بهذا الأمر الآن إن شاء الله. هسأل السؤال: Why should we talk about القدس now? I have maybe four facts. 4 حقائق. الحقيقة الأولى أن مدينة القدس هي المدينة الوحيدة على مستوى العالم التي يوجد فيها معالم مقدسة لرسالات السماء، لكل رسالات السماء، لليهودية والمسيحية والإسلام. يبقى first fact, the city of Al-Quds is the only city world that has sacred places for all the 3 major religions: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. In the city there is a church, a synagogue, and the Al-Aqsa Masjid. The first. الأمر الثاني أن مدينة القدس المسيحي يمارس طقوسه، واليهودي، المسيحي في الكنيسة واليهودي في السيناغوج والمسلم في المسجد في المسجد الأقصى. يبقى second in القدس the Christians practice their religion in that church. The Jews practice their religion in the synagogue, and the Muslims practice Islam in the Al-Aqsa Masjid. الأمر الثالث أن الفترة الوحيدة، بس دي الأمرين اللي جايين مهمين جدا، أن الفترة الوحيدة التي مورست في هذه المدينة حرية العبادة هي فترة اللي أدارها المسلمين. حرية العبادة الفترة الوحيدة، ولم يحدث ظلم في هذا المكان إلا بعد أن حدث للمسلمين ما حدث. But third, the period of time where all the 3 religions were practiced freely in Al-Quds was when it was administered by Muslims. الأمر الرابع وهو المهم أيها الإخوة والأخوات، أن إدارة المسلمين لشؤون مدينة القدس بالعدل بعد أن فتحها سيدنا عمر ليست يعني شيء كده يعني شيء ثانوي أو شيء غير أساسي، وإنما هو تكليف من رب العالمين، تكليف للمسلمين إن هم يخلي بالهم من هذا المكان، لأن الله تبارك وتعالى قال: كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس. في في كل الجوانب، في كل الجوانب والله يا إخوة. يبقى fourth and last, when Muslims ruled Al-Quds during the times of Khalifa Umar ibn al-Khattab, they did it justly and fairly as commanded by their Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Al Imran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said: كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس. You were the best ummah that was created. You enjoy what is good and forbid what is sinful, and believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى ونحن في هذه اللحظات إنه يحقق الأمن والأمان والطمأنينة لإخواننا وأهلنا في القدس يا رب، وأن يجعلنا أهلا لهذه الفترة نحن وأزواجنا وأولادنا في تحملنا لهذه المسؤولية. تحمل هذه المسؤولية نذكر الفلسطيني بيقول لا not all Muslim all أمة. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعلنا أهلا لهذه الفترة اللهم، وأن يكشف الكرب عن أمتنا الإسلامية، وأن يعيد للأقصى عزه ومكانته، ولأهل فلسطين جميعا يا رب العالمين، وللمسلمين في كل مكان. أسأل الله أن يفرج كرب المسلمين يا رب في كل مكان. في مصر اللهم فرج كرب المسلمين، فرج كرب المسلمين يا رب في ليبيا، فرج كرب المسلمين يا رب في سوريا، في تونس، في الجزائر، في المغرب، فرج كرب المسلمين في أفريقيا، فرج كرب المسلمين في كشمير يا رب. ونحن في هذه الليلة اللهم رد عن المسلمين في كشمير كل كيد وكل سوء، ووفقنا جميعا إلى ما تحب وترضى، اللهم آمين. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.
جزاك الله خيرا وبارك الله فيك يا شيخ. Our next guest, next lecturer is Dr. HATEM BAZIAN. Dr. HATEM is the co-founder of Zaytuna College, which is the first accredited undergraduate institution in the United States. He's also a co-founder of SJP and American Muslims for Palestine, AMP. Dr. Hatem is also a global authority on Islamophobia. So please help me welcome Dr. HATEM BAZIAN.
So I just want to.
Assalamu alaikum. It's not for personal comfort, but just to be close to some of the tech that I need to use in here, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salatu wa-salamu. That's good. I'm a faculty. Can you stay till suhoor?
Inshallah.
Inshallah. No, I'll try to be within time. Bismillah. So I'm going to start with this ad for us to watch and see if it works.
Sorry, Papa. Gotta get the fire.
Again, I could do it without, so it's not.
ما جربتش انت؟
Just watch the spot. It's a commercial for that was aired in the 2016 election. Okay, so that's the first spot. We're gonna watch the second spot.
Is it muted from?
Huh? Right here.
No, it's not.
جزء الكمبيوتر نفسه اللي ميوت.
No, it's not. So this is the second spot. So how many of you watched this commercial before, this ad? If you saw it, raise your hand. No one? Now, how much do you think this ad cost to run in the 2016 election?
10 million.
Hmm?
10 million.
No, that's a little bit too much.
2 million.
Okay. It's $2.5 million. These were spots that were targeting white voters in the United States during the 2016 election. Right, so again, maybe as a Muslim, when you logged on Facebook or on Twitter and so on, you did not get these ads. But these were targeted ads during the 2016 election that went to white voters in particular in various states in the United States by the Trump campaign in such a way to drive Islamophobia to monetize it at the ballot box. I'll get back to the ads where you could access them in here, ads for the 2016 election. We've been documenting and monitoring ads since the 2008 election. So this is something that we were seeing not only in here but other places. Like what was to start with Martin Luther King, cowardice as the question, is it safe? Expediency as the question, is it politic? Vanity as the question, is it popular? But conscience as the question, is it right? And on some positions, it is necessary for the moral individual to take a stand that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do so because it is right. So again, when we speak about Islamophobia, Palestine, and Zionism and the connection, we are doing so because it's the right thing to do, not because we're trying to at least fudge between the line and find our positions. Now, Daniel Pipes. But I will get into... That's fine. I think I could read from you. To go to the other side? Okay. Sure. I'll continue talking until you come back. So, Daniel Pipes' statement, I think every Muslim in this country should understand this statement. This statement he gave to in the American Jewish Congress, AJC conference in 2001. He said, I worry very much from the Jewish point of view that the presence and increased stature and affluence and enfranchisement of American Muslims will present true dangers to American Jews. So let's again focus on the terminology that he used. He says he worried very much that the presence, meaning you in here, your presence, is a major threat. Your increased stature, the fact that you're beginning to be people of importance, of influence, whether it's Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, whether you're a doctor, lawyer, professor, business person, or broader, that your stature in the society is beginning to take shape. And it is being seen in general. And affluence, again, that you have resources in terms of where you're at in the country, and enfranchisement. You remember 2000, where the Muslims actually voted as a bloc, right? They voted for Bush. We'll critique that at another point. But that was enfranchisement of the American Muslims. That is seen as a true danger, because now the pro-Israel crowd no longer is by itself in the political arena, that there is a counterbalance and, in essence, a community that is ready to take the issues. Daniel Pipes also supports the internment of Muslims. Actually, he's saying that the internment of the Japanese, he critiques those who actually called for the apology on the Japanese internment and so on. He actually believed that since the American 44% believed that the Muslims in America should be monitored and interned, he actually believed that internment of the Muslims should be undertaken. And I'll still get back to his statement in there. In this article, he said that Muslims need to be interned. So he's looking at the threat of the Muslim community, and Daniel Pipes is a major figure in the Islamophobia industry in this sense. Now, why Islamophobia for the pro-Israel organizations and groups? M.J. Rosenberg, who formerly worked for the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, recently wrote that the right-wing Zionists opposing the community center, this was the Ground Zero Mosque, which was not a mosque, nor was it the Ground Zero, but that's a side issue for those who are engaging in the propaganda. They believe that the more acceptance there is of Muslims here in this country, the more acceptance there is of Muslims here at home, the less reflexive hatred there is for Muslims abroad. The less reflexive hatred there is for people for abroad, and that in their view reduces America's sympathy for Israel. Meaning Islamophobia wants to produce reflexive hatred, and if you have reflexive hatred, then when Muslims die and are killed, then you don't actually consider they are being human, they are being killed. So that's what reflexive hatred produces. So in their mind is how to construct and produce reflexive hatred for Muslims, to stoke Islamophobia and national security concern, to boost the GOP in the midterm elections. So again, that's part of the strategy and the focus in relation to their thinking. What we need to be aware is how Israel positioned both in the United States and the Western world shifted after the Cold War. Because you have to think of
Doesn't work.
So, what we need to account is for Israel's change of its status and position post the Cold War. So, post Cold War and also the Iranian Revolution of 1975, Israel recast itself to prevent Islamic extremism and Arab nationalism. But now their focus is on Islamic extremism. So, for those who focus, let's say, on was development in Egypt and other parts of the Muslim world, Israel is a key ally post-Cold War, so that's recasting its role. Reassert its strategic value in a unipolar world, meaning there is only one superpower, so it needs to cast itself and assert that it has importance and significance. Speak of the common threat with the West, especially after 9/11, they wrote a whole public speaking strategy of how the pro-Israel spokespeople need to engage with the language that needs to be articulated. So the Luntz report specifically of how to cast the language relative to Israel. Provide training and know-how as subcontractor. Every local police department in the United States, with some exceptions, send their police personnel to be trained in Israel. So we saw that in Ferguson, we saw in others, so they cast themselves as a subcontractor. And post 9/11, they actually developed two Arab-looking towns for military personnel to be trained in there. So again, if you think about how we get that the only way for training on terrorism is to focus on casting stereotypical representation of Arab and Muslims, Israel have cast itself as a subcontractor for this and have actually developed it almost into a science. expand its foreign policy reach so as to become more viable. That's where its relation with India, for anyone who's following Moody and the relationship between India and Israel, both militarily, strategically, and so on, as a way also to contain Pakistan relative to their nuclear development. And at least evidence show that India's nuclear program was facilitated by support from Israel early on. So again, this is part of India, China, and Sub-Saharan Africa become the go-to expert in countering Islamic ideologies and movements. So for those who look at the PREVENT program in the UK, you could actually see a lot of material from Israel and pro-Israel operatives that have made it into the language to be used, as well as the countering violent extremism here in the United States. So again, this is what Israel casts itself post-Cold War. Who's producing Islamophobia in the United States? Again, this is very important for us to know. Pro-Israel activists have been the major contributors to financing, production, distribution, and usage of Islamophobia in the American context, and I would argue also in the European context. In the studies that I have done, as well as others, through looking at 990 report, which is the tax returns, I estimate that 70% of the funding to the Islamophobia industry come from pro-Israel sources. Again, let me repeat this for us to understand. From 990, which is tax returns, 70% of the funding to the Islamophobia industry comes from pro-Israel sources. And some of the major organizations, Islamophobic organizations, are being funded from the pro-Israel infrastructure in this country. And these are the pro-Israel institutions that are actually driving Islamophobia. Canvas Watch, American Freedom Defense Initiative, Washington Institute of Near East Policy, Center for Security Studies, Middle East Forum, Daniel Pipes, Middle East Media Research Institute, Clarion Fund, and Haish Haturah, which is from Israel itself. Freedom Center. Now you might see AJC, American Jewish Committee, is also JCRC, Jewish Community Relations Council, ADL, APAC, Center for Security Policy, which is the Center for Frank Gaffney, Pajama Media, which is run by Pamela Geller, which you know from New York, Camera, which targets all of our communities in a systematic way, Investigative Project on Terrorism of Stephen Emerson, who actually produces a dossier on every Muslim leader accusing them of terrorism, and that's what Peter King, your own congressman from the local areas in New York, uses in his hearings on domestic threat of Muslims. So again, the Investigative Project on Terrorism of Daniel Pipes, Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, an oxymoronic name. It actually should be the Foundation Against Democracies, because that's the foundation, again, that is neocon and targets and produces materials that often demonizing of Muslims. Lastly, I put San Francisco and LA Jewish Federations. Just recently, just about a year ago, we found from 990 returns that the Jewish Federations, which is the major fundraising arm for Jewish communities around the country, were primary funders of Islamophobic organizations. So I would add the New York Jewish Federation, Chicago Jewish Federation, LA Jewish Federation. I have all of their tax returns for the past 3 years, and looking at their tax return. Again, this is tax return of what they funded. They funded the Patriots, the Tea Party Patriots. Again, they funded from the San Francisco Jewish Federation. They funded Camera. They funded Frank Gaffney. They funded Gert Wilder of the Netherlands, the person who actually promoted the Muslim, the Prophet's cartoon, negative cartoons of the Prophet being represented as a terrorist, and also produced the documentary Fitna. All right? So this is coming from your federations, who are the main funding arms for various Jewish communities. Some of their funding is very positive. When they fund synagogues and so on, it's very positive in schools, but they're also funding a lot of hate and demonization of Muslims. And so far, none of them has actually expressed an apology to the Muslim community. Actually, anyone that comes and knocks your door, he wants to hug you on Islamophobia, say, I want you to stop funding and I want you to apologize and condemn the organizations that you have funded. All right? It's not a matter of just what you call, be happy that somebody says, Assalamu alaikum, and I like your falafel hummus and chicken tikka masala. I really care less. Whether you like hummus or not, that's not the issue. I want you actually to respect the community and not to be a person that's promoting all this hatred and funding of hatred and discrimination. Again, these are pro-Israel institutions that are at the hub of the Islamophobia industry in this country and abroad. Pro-Israel institutions, stop the Islamization of America, investigative project again, and this is Geert Wilders, right? Geert Wilders, his party in the Netherlands is a neo-Nazi party. As you're not talking about an individual all of a sudden, liberal values and so on. This is a neo-Nazi party that is being funded by the San Francisco Jewish Federation. Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs is also engaged in the demonization, especially on college campuses, using Islamophobia and targeting Muslims by calling them terrorists, whether you're SJP or MSA and so on. So even at that level, the engagement of the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs, and they're committing resources, massive resources, to this end as well. Now, this is the book, American Jihad. I tend to travel a lot, and in various periods when this book was first came out, it was on all of the bookshelves in the airports. This is Stephen Emerson, the preeminent Islamophobe. Right? He's the one after the Oklahoma bombing said that this has the footprint of the Muslims, because Oklahoma is a major center for Muslim activism. And if you look, there wasn't that many Muslims in all of Oklahoma. You can't gather them in one mosque. But he's actually, again, his book is promoted. Now, this book was promoted by AJC, American Jewish Committee, for people to read. I know that AJC has been reaching out to the Muslim community and trying to say, we want to be with you fighting Islamophobia. I want you to condemn and pull this recommendation out of your reading list. I want you to say that Stephen Emerson is an Islamophobe. He does not represent our value, and that this book belongs not even in the trash, because it's an insult to the trash to actually say it belongs in there. So you need actually for somebody who comes in there to say, you recommended this book. They also gave the Courage Award to Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Do you know Ayaan Hirsi Ali?
Yeah.
You know Ayaan Hirsi Ali? Right? Then the Somali woman, again, nothing wrong about being Somali or woman, but she was in the Netherlands. They actually found that she lied on much of her record. They withdrew her Dutch citizenship, and now she came to the United States. She's right now given as a resident scholar in the American Enterprise Institute. She was interviewed on CNN. She has left Islam. Again, she has a choice. It's a free country. But then she recommends that Muslims, in order for them to be in America, they need to actually embrace Christianity. Now, this is what the AJC gave as the Courage Award. The only Muslim that they find to give Courage Award is the person that leaves Islam and tell all Muslims actually to convert to Christianity. So, if you want to be in relations with the Muslim community, again, you don't give a Courage Award to Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Again, this is what you specifically need to be taken into account. And then their own director, David Harris, had a long history of constantly having Islamophobic content in his radio spots. So again, this is just facts and research that you need to actually put in front of people's faces. David Horowitz also was funded by Jewish federations. He has the professors, the 100 most dangerous academics in America. Now, I was number 32 in this. I'm gladly to say to you, I'm number 1 now, the most dangerous professor in America, meaning I'm doing my work. But again, this is attacking individuals that are doing research and continue to resist and point out who's doing what relative to the United States, not only Islamophobia, but other areas as well. Now, you'll all remember this. The ads from Pamela Geller. All right? These ads went into the buses in New York, in Chicago, in Seattle, in San Francisco. In any war between the civilized man and the savage, support the civilized man, support Israel, defeat jihad. So again, using the language of civilized and uncivilized and savage, this creating Islamophobia in the public arena by Pamela Geller and her group, and again, some prominent members of the American Zionist or American pro-Israel community was supporting these ads and providing the resources for it. Now, important to look at Islamophobia. I'm focusing on the pro-Israel, but Islamophobia, in essence, in terms of who are behind it, the institution and machinery of the state, for sure, the far right, incorporating the counter-jihad movement, the neoconservative movement, part of the transnational Zionist movement, and assorted liberal groupings that are behind. So these are the 5 forces that we're dealing with, and I added 6, actually, the Arab governments. We just recently published a book, Islamophobia in Muslim majority countries, that looked at Muslim governments that now are actually promoting Islamophobia. Sisi was advising the French and other European countries of how to deal with Muslims, including also other Arab countries, advising that these are Muslims that you need to wash their mosques. Daniel Pipes have an open invitation to do projects in the United Arab Emirates, and he actually takes an annual group to visit the United Arab Emirates, and a whole host of other Islamophobes are giving the red carpet in many parts of the Muslim world. So if you have time, look at the book, Islamophobia in Muslim majority countries, and I have a chapter on dealing with those issues. So there's actually a 6th line in there where Islamophobia coming from Muslim majority countries. Now you saw the 2 ads in the beginning, right? The funder for these 2 ads was Robert Mercer. He's a billionaire, a major Zionist billionaire, who's funding these ads. So why would a Zionist billionaire fund these ads targeting Muslims to try to get to elect Trump? Right? So this is again the main funder, and this is not to engage in what you call the conspiracy about that everything's taking place as a result of Jewish engagement, because we have a progressive segment of the Jewish community that is standing and critiquing Robert Mercer just like me. So again, we need to differentiate. For example, Jewish Voice for Peace, If Not Now, and others have been, or Rabbis for Human Rights, that are critiquing this, so but to understand that this is a strategy. Robert Mercer also is behind Cambridge Analytica. So many of you possibly are dealing with the whole attack on the elections, both in here as well as the election in Brexit in the UK. So Mercer is actually the funder of Cambridge Analytica. He's also behind the ads, the Islamophobic ads. So again, you see, Mercer also is behind Breitbart News. Stephen Bannon, right? So do you see the connection? You say, well, Stephen Bannon, he's like anti-Muslim, he's working with all these nationalists, white supremacists. It just does not make what you call clarity unless you follow the dollars, follow the sign, and follow who is doing what. And again, we find that Robert Mercer and Rebecca, his daughter, is the major funder for Breitbart, and also the funder for Camera, which is the organization that monitors and documents speeches and stocks, both in the Muslim world and here, and then promotes these out as symbolic or representative of anti-Semitism, and then in essence use it for political purposes. Anti-Semitism exists. But again, if you want to look at anti-Semitism, I would say, why would you support the white nationalists? Why would you support, at this point, Trump and all his continued anti-Semitism, even during the election period? The Ilhan Omar and the PDS, the attack on her is also coming from ADL has attacked her, JTLC have attacked her, AIPAC has attacked her, AJC have attacked her. So again, you cannot be a Muslim engaged in political arena and be left alone unchallenged. You have to be in essence, targeted in a systematic way, and we see this targeting of Ilhan Omar. Sheldon Adelson is the major funder for Trump's, one of the major funders for Trump campaign. And all intents and purposes, Trump's rewarded his contribution by moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That was his request. All right, so he's a major, major funder. If you remember when Newt Gingrich ran for election, he gave Newt Gingrich $10 million or something around that. The next day, Newt Gingrich went on TV and said Palestinians are an invented people. So that's what $10 million buy you. Right? As a historian, basically he actually completely erased history. So he had a prize, $10 million, for erasing his mental capacity. So yes, this is Sheldon Adelson. Gave $100 million to Birthright. This is the project that takes any young Jewish person to Israel for a fully paid trip. And increasingly, some of the young Jewish activists who are going to Birthright are actually resisting and challenging Birthright. So we have development among the Jewish community in the United States, which also point to some of the concerns from the established organization of why they want to increase their relationship with the Muslims as a way to point that we're not as bad as you think, type of approach. I don't know if you see these images. Now, I started the Center for Islamophobia Studies immediately after the 2008 elections. Now, why 2008 election? You remember, we elected the first Muslim president, right? Right? Right?
Yeah.
So think about it. Barack Hussein Obama. Right? For many parts in the Midwest, that was like the nightmare. Like they got up in the morning, they did tasbih, right, in their own way of what's happening. 43% of the American public believed Obama was a Muslim. Right? 43%. Even till today, you'll find actually some data will show that about 23 to 24% and more so among the Republicans. Now, do you think this was incidental, like all of a sudden somebody, let's say Obama is a Muslim? You don't run campaigns and elections without polling, without focus group, without public relations specialists and so on. There was a study that showed that one of the most difficult way to get elected in America for a person, if a person says, I am an atheist, around 64% of the American public will not vote for him or her. 64%. In number two, we're number two, right? About 63% of the American public will not vote for a person that says, I am a Muslim. So the attack on Obama, he's a Muslim and he's a socialist, basically tugging around the atheist aspect in order to make people fearful and to actually not vote for him. So it was part of a strategy and a way to monetize hatred against Islam and Muslims and drive it into the ballot box. So in the 2008 election, we see the first time that Islamophobia is monetized at the ballot box for votes. It did not succeed because the country was in a very anti-war footing and they were tired of the engagement, so they wanted to change. But it succeeded in the 2010 elections. All right? You remember 2010 election, that was the Ground Zero Mosque.
Right.
Now the Ground Zero Mosque campaign, the framing was from Pamela Geller. She introduced the Ground Zero Mosque and the Republicans ran with it. They picked up the issue in July and by November 4th, you did not see any story after that about the Ground Zero Mosque. Why? Because again, it served its purpose and they moved on. Now, during the 2008 election, obsession, radical Islam war against the West, till today is the most expensive Islamophobic material to be used in elections. This documentary, Obsession. Right? How much does this cost for the election purposes? Millions. Does anybody here have 17 million? I'll talk to you outside. They spent $17 million to distribute this documentary in swing states. You will get it in your Sunday newspaper as a DVD. I know no longer we don't use DVD, but that's $17 million. 28 million copies were distributed. Okay? So again, there is money and there is real money. This is real money dropped for hate. Right? Now the next one, third jihad, they had Obama's eyes in there. After the election, they began to promote that now Muslims have entered into the third jihad, they took over the country. That's where the theme comes, we need to take our country back. And the birther movement develops, and it's not ironic that the founder of the birther movement and the leader is sitting in the White House. Yeah? So again, we tend to what you call to forget what we ate for breakfast, and if you don't keep your eye on the ball, you don't know exactly what is taking place and what is being played on us. So the 2000 presidential election, the Endowment for Middle East Truth, Clarion Fund, share the same new address because that's where the producers of the obsession. The threat of radical Islam is the same as that posed by Nazi Germany. So this is the funder and the mechanism behind obsession, and then also the third jihad Clarion Fund. Those are the institutions that structurally is putting massive amount of resources to demonize in order, again, in my view, based on Daniel Pipes, to protect Israel's interests in the United States and demonize and isolate Muslims. Obsession is an Israeli campaign to impact U.S. election. They talk about the Russian meddling in the U.S. elections. They never mention Israeli meddling in the U.S. elections. This is 28 million copies. We actually have the name of the organization, the addresses, and where it was sent, and the amount of money. But you're not going to get anybody that's going to actually raise their hand for an investigation. Okay. Israeli operatives stoking the fires of Islamophobia. That's basically what you have for strategic purposes. Now they also have a campaign. Recently, the New Yorker had a whole article where private Mossad was operating on college campuses, and they were actually targeting me at UC Berkeley. They targeted my own street with flyers on all the cars in my neighborhood calling me terrorist. And then on the campus you have posters with my face and a couple of other professors' face. The operation is $2.5 million. Again, to demonize and contest the presence of Muslims, Arab, Palestinians on college campuses. This, again, was in the New Yorker magazine. Adam Entus had a couple of articles on the subject. Now, the ideological driving force, Huntington Clash of Civilization, which was actually the thesis of Bernard Lewis, the Orientalist, where he says that the main threat, again, Bernard Lewis is a major Zionist, is one of the what you call philosophical foundations for the neocons, and basically posited in the Clash of Civilization that the Muslims and the Chinese are the major threat to Western civilization in the post-Cold War, and then arguing that culture and cultural differences are the driving force for these challenges, using culture and cultural racism and a signpost for a biological racism. Then after that, he wrote, Samuel Huntington wrote, "Who Are We?" and said that basically the Latinos are the major threat to America, and that's where you get the whole campaign of the invasion from the Latinos and the building of the wall, the whole replacement philosophy that these people are replacing the white race, and you stole white nationalism and white supremacy. So these are the ideological foundations that are driving this. And in essence, what we need is to understand the logic that is being promoted as well. This is the Clash of Civilization. I wrote a whole piece on the Clash of Civilization thesis and how it's being deployed within an Islamophobic lens, and pointing out who's behind it, but that's not, I'm not going to talk about this. Now, drive right-wing populism, the two major figures that actually formulated this are two major figures from the Jewish community. And they began to test it first in the election in Hungary. Starting in 2008, Birnbaum and Finkelstein worked in secret to get Orban elected. Their victory in Hungary, away from the intense political scrutiny of Western Europe, showed that constructing an external enemy could bring electoral success in the modern era. It allowed Hungary to give birth to Trump before Trump, as Steve Bannon said. Again, this is their own, and they actually targeted George Soros, a Jewish person, right? While at the one hand they're saying that they were standing for anti-Semitism, Trump campaign actually used anti-Semitism. If you remember in the last election where he had the picture of Soros with the Jewish star on his campaign and so on. So actually they deployed anti-Semitism in a sophisticated way as well as Islamophobia. So again, if anyone wants to challenge Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, let's work together, but it has to be on a correct foundation, not actually to use to try to fight Islamophobia and anti-Semitism to protect Israel. That can be the framing. If you want to fight anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, we actually can create a real partnership, because the anti-Semite and the Islamophobe, they have been at it for 500 years from the Inquisition period. Right? So the same people that hated Muslims in the Inquisition were hating Jews. And what we need is to understand the logic and the systematic process. So hugging Orban in Hungary or Marine Le Pen or others is not going to alter or change or protect what you think your interests at this particular time. So again, every election is decided before it even begins. Most people know who they will vote for, what they support and what they oppose. It's very difficult to convince them otherwise, Finkelstein believed. It's easier to demonize people than to motivate them. Meaning, that's why you want to demonize them, in essence, to reduce or to impact election in general. But that's, again, that's the strategy. Racism by design wins the election, so Islamophobia wins the elections. In here, connecting to America First, right? For those who are watching what is taking place, this is nothing new. America First, one God, one community, one flag. America First, those who are trying to say to this is our country, go back home, you don't belong in here. It has a long history, it's nothing new. Lynching in America. The high season of lynching in America is between 1876 and 1950, after the Civil War. Almost 4,000 African Americans were lynched, 2 per week. So that was white terrorism against African Americans. Domestically, we still don't define white terrorism as white terrorism. White supremacy is a major threat domestically. We still can't find the language to actually to describe it as terrorism. These are the lynching in 12 southern states. Massacre of 17 Chinese men in Los Angeles that was covered up during the Chinese Exclusionary Act. I'm putting these to understand that the possibility of massacre, lynching, and targeting of minorities once you stoke racism is real, it's not theory. Right? So we understand that the word stimulates individuals to take action, and we have a long history of this. Wyoming, September 2nd, 1885, with the Chinese encampment being attacked. Right? Right-wing populism in European Union. All of these politicians visited Israel. These are right-wing politicians that represent neo-Nazi parties, or at least, if not neo-Nazi, highly nationalist parties in Europe, whether it's in France, Marine Le Pen's party, UKIP in the UK, the Netherlands with Wilders, and just recently they ran a unified party for the European Parliament election. So again, I'm interested to see if any organization wants to partner on Islamophobia with the Muslim community. Where is your condemnation of Israel welcoming all these right-wing figures before you actually speak to us about Muslims? Where is your statement of condemnation? Where is AJC statement saying to Netanyahu, we condemn you for meeting with these right-wing politicians from neo-Nazis? Right? I'm about to finish a few only. For those, we just released a whole report on India, Islamophobia in India, the first report of its kind on Islamophobia in India, 157 pages. I visited India myself. I went down to Kerala, conducted a whole workshop for people of how to counter Islamophobia in India. And we have now a research line that focuses on Islamophobia in India. You could download it. It's for free. You could download it from our website, Islamophobia in India. And to document what is taking place from the Love Jihad campaign that's directing the Muslims. And there's cooperation between Israel and India, again, with Muri. Lynching, right, in terms of the lynching that Muslims are facing, especially those who are accused of eating beef, even though India is one of the largest exporter of beef to the Muslim world. Right? So, again, this is driving nationalism around, ultra-nationalism around identity. Last thing is that we're also having an Islamophobia reporting app. So if you actually have an Android phone or an iPhone, download the Islamophobia reporting app and report Islamophobia. Many people I know say, MashaAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you for being patient. Yes. Allah reward you for being patient, but we want the data. Data drives policy. If you don't have data, we can't actually impact policy. So we want you to actually download the app and report any incidents of Islamophobia. Yes, mashallah will work, but i'aqil wa tawakkal is also part of our sunnah. Meaning tie your camel or your Mercedes, whichever you choose, and report. So I want the data because I will be able to actually put the data forward. Saying, well, I feel discriminated against, feelings again needs data behind it, otherwise we won't be able. So facts and data, and on a monthly basis. So again, you could report this, experience Islamophobia, and also we have it in Arabic, and we're going to also develop other languages as well. And you could stay in contact with me on whether it's a website or through Twitter or Facebook. And look forward to any of your questions. Jazakumullah khair, and sorry for taking much of your time. I think a semester worth material in a short period of time.
Jazakallah khair.
Bismillah, I saw a hand. Go ahead.
Questions?
Go ahead. No, him first, then you. Yes. Yes.
Yes, my question is that, as we see that the media in the United States and Western Europe, in the Arab countries and the whole Muslim countries today, is controlled also by these powers. And therefore, my question is, how can we really bring this to make it louder so more people hear it?
Well, we have to approach it systematically. You're never going to have the same power and resources as those who have the power to demonize. Right? Even if we think of our own prophetic tradition, the Prophet ﷺ never had what you call more resources, always had less resources than what he confronted. So what we need is to use our skill of organizing and make sure that one is our community is united. We have to unite ourselves. Second is to have information. So this is part of sharing information and develop ways to relate it. Third is to do systematic work, and I think this is some of the things that we're doing systematic work. So documentation is one. We're also doing work on public policy to effect implicit bias in order to do that. We're also doing something in education, Islamophobia and how to counter Islamophobia in education, public health and others. And then lastly, we need to actually take ourselves and engage politically. And I encourage Muslims to run for elections. The worst thing that could happen is that you could lose, but even in that, you actually present your issues. They could say, we disagree with you, but at least they have to go through the process of disagreeing with you. So I encourage people to run. Just run for whatever position you think. You might run once, twice, 3 times, but again, this is part of making your footprint in the society. And lastly, create coalitions with individuals that are committed to your empowerment, not to your public relations engagement. So I actually differentiate between Muslims, which is the photo op, versus somebody saying, let me take you with me so we could empower ourselves. So I am committed to individuals that are committed to empowering the Muslim community. That's why I'm very critical of the major Zionist organizations. When Keith Ellison ran for the chairmanship of the Democratic Party, ADL attacked him with anti-Semitism 2 weeks before his election. AJC attacked him with anti-Semitism charge. JCRC attacked him with anti-Semitism. ABAC attacked him. So at the moment that Trump was elected and exposing out Islamophobia, this is the time they should have actually say, yes, we disagree on Palestine, but we see that the empowerment of Muslim community in America is an important step, and therefore we want to endorse Keith Ellison. They did it. They opted to protect Israel interests at the expense of actually disempowerment or actually demonizing Keith Ellison. And I think this is what we need to actually make very clear. If you are committed to working for the empowerment of the Muslim community, we actually could have something to say and discuss. But if you're actually going to attack every individual because you think Israel interest supersedes our collective interest, then I don't think we have partnership in here. Alaikum salam.
First of all, thank you so much for the detailed information. Very detailed.
Thank you.
I want to know, is there a website, somewhere we can go to get a full list of all the pro-Israeli products, companies that support?
That's the PDS. I'm one of the major advocates of PDS in the United States. We don't ask individuals to boycott 2,000 companies. You would actually begin to boycott yourself. Right?
The problem is so bad, we have very fast with Israeli dates.
I know it, but wait, let me talk to you so we can go through. Let me talk to you so you need to know the strategy of the BDS movement. This comes through our experience with the anti-apartheid movement. In the anti-apartheid movement, we selected specific campaigns and specific products. During the anti-apartheid, we picked on Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola had a plant in South Africa. Therefore, it was supportive of the South Africa apartheid regime, so we targeted. Coca-Cola was present in all the campuses, all the universities. It was present in all of the athletic fields. It was present in almost every grocery store. But not only that, there was an alternative to Coca-Cola, Pepsi. Pepsi was not in South Africa. So we actually knew that if we target Coca-Cola, we would be able to impact their bottom line with a few percentage points. That's what you only can. And then we begin to create the mobilization from college campuses to challenge Coca-Cola, because now you have a direct target, right, to rally students. So now the Coca-Cola machine in the middle of the student union, so you have actually students protesting, standing around and blocking the Coca-Cola machine. So you create what you call the emotional campaign around it. In a short period of time, Pepsi began to send their proposals that we have a social responsibility, we are not in South Africa. Alhamdulillah, Pepsi began to be the advertiser for the anti-apartheid movement. Similar way, when we think about the various products, you need to look at what campaigns are being carried out. So for example, there's a campaign on dates, right? That's the campaign we're asking institutions, individuals to wear. There was a campaign on Soda Spring, which is the water company. There's a campaign on HP. If you have a capacity individually to boycott X, Y, and Z, do so. But it'd be very difficult to say, give me a list of the 2,000 companies, right? This will create immobilization of individuals who want to actually participate in making a change. So people that are engaged in the BDS are systematic, right? It is not the product itself, it's what you create relative to the strategy of the product that you mobilize people around. So you have to be very systematic and understand what is the strategy behind the strategy.
All right, so we were at lunch earlier today.
Yes.
And if you did hear a gentleman say that there are American, if you allow me to say Jewish organizations, or let's say Zionist organizations, that come into our masajid in the garb of interfaith.
Yes.
and they're entering with an agenda. And of course the agenda is to isolate members from our community by associating themselves with them, and at one point even inviting them at their expense over to what they call Israel and what we call occupied Palestine.
Yes.
Okay. So the thing is, how do we know? Like, I know you mentioned Jewish Voice for Peace.
Jewish Voice for Peace, if not now, break the silence. There's a number of groups.
Amongst the people here, there are leaders in the community, and we've all been victims, directly or indirectly, of this so-called interfaith.
Yeah.
So how can we be active in interfaith and at the same time understand that we are vulnerable and we can become victims of people with an agenda, like some organizations that were mentioned earlier?
Okay. Well, if you're a mosque or a religious institution, the only interfaith that you should engage with is with a church or a synagogue. The rabbi and the church priest, that's where interfaith, you're talking about the text and so on. If you're dealing with organizations that are outside of that realm, then for me those are highly politicized, specifically to address Israel needs in the United States. For example, what did you talk about? AJC, ADL, JCRC, Jewish Community Relations Council, and a whole bunch of their first priority is to protect and preserve Israel's interests in the United States. And anytime that somebody puts on your front table that I want you to go with me to Israel to know about Judaism and Jewish relations to Israel, this is no longer interfaith. This is political mobilization toward a settler colonial project. Let me give you specifically what the Palestinians inside Palestine are saying. This is about 600 organizations from Palestinian civil society. If you're coming to Palestine on a funded trip by a Zionist organization or a pro-Israel organization, we are not welcome you in Palestine. You're violating our right as Palestinians, and you're aiding and abetting, directly or indirectly, the operations or the structure of occupation. If you want to visit Palestine, whether it's your own money, or Muslims want funding you, or if you don't have the money, we will raise the money for you in here to go and visit Palestine. We'll welcome you in Al-Aqsa Mosque. We'll give you a tour. We'll let you sit with all of the people, but you have to come with that you are showing solidarity and engaging with the Palestinians. This is 600 civil society organizations, including the leadership of all the Christian Palestinian groups inside Palestine. Right? From Father Taib to Mitri Rehab to all of the Palestinian Christians. They actually put out a document, Kairos Palestina, that specifically says what is the position of Christian Palestinians. So if you want to engage in interfaith engagement with Palestinians on the issue of Palestine, there's also a mechanism to do that, and we go into joint trips with the Jewish Voice for Peace, with the Christian Witness for Peace, and they go, but they're actually going to engage the Palestinians, and they're not taking any money or resources or being sponsored by by Zionist organizations in the United States. This is the statement from all the Palestinian civil society groups. Unless, again, I cannot see anyone coming in and say, well, I discovered how to solve it for you by me, the smartest person in the United States. I am being sponsored by AJC or MLI Shalom Hartman. I'm going to be the peace-loving person who's going to transform Palestine because I figured it out. That's doubly insult. On the one, you're taking the support of a Zionist organization, and second, you're demeaning the Palestinians that they didn't know their struggle, right, for the past 100 years. At least, if you can't help us, please don't use us as a bridge to your civic engagement and upward mobility in American society. That's all I do. The least you could do, please just don't use us as a bridge. There's about 192 countries where you could actually go to visit and engage in interfaith dialogue with a Jewish person. So don't tell me that the only place for you to go is to go to a Zionist organization, to take you to Jerusalem, in a place where Palestinians can step a foot, and to say that you're coming there because you all of a sudden you're the enlightened Muslims. I want to know what type of enlightenment you have if the voice of the occupied people you're not listening to. And most of it is about access in here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, you live in America, There's about 3,000 opportunities for you to actually engage. You could just stand in 7-Eleven and engage. You don't need to go to an occupied land for you to actually pretend that you're engaging in interfaith. This is, again, we call it faith washing. You're using religious discourse to actually faith wash. Palestinians are subject to a settler colonialism. At least we ask people to have the basic dignity. If you can't help us, please don't aid our oppressor. That's the only request. If you can't help us, by all means, just don't help our oppressor by pretending that you're actually part of the solution. Last question.
So, I'm sorry if you allow me to say, maybe him and then maybe two sisters if you don't mind, or we didn't give the sisters a chance.
By all means.
Okay.
Right, my question will be short. Islamophobia, we cannot deny the fact. So in school, if we deal such kind of incident, how should we, deal with them? How should we train our children to deal with Islamophobia?
Yeah.
And how, as a parent, we should deal with Islamophobia?
Well, we're actually just right now in the final stages of writing a report on how to deal with Islamophobia in public education, on education in general. I think the key is to train administrators and teachers. Because if you don't have the teacher and administrators put the iron laws within the school, then you're dealing with a child by child trying to solve bullying based on religious identity. So that's on the institution. On the parents, I think what you need is to speak and talk to your kids and do role-playing with them before you actually wait for the occurrence to take place. Because the occurrence actually will take place. The report that we did that CARE did in California, 55% of Muslim kids face Islamophobia relative to their identity in school. So I would actually encourage you to do some of the training in school and role play with your kids these circumstances so they would not be shocked when they are facing this, whether they're bullied on their name or the teacher actually called them all kinds of names, because sometimes the teachers themselves are the ones that are actually exhibiting Islamophobia. So that's what I would deal with it in that way. This is Wa alaikum salam.
I just want to ask you, so these travel agencies here in the United States, they take groups to Palestine, to Tel Aviv, right? They fly to there.
That's different. If you fly to Tel Aviv as part of the tour that is funded you privately or some Muslim group, Palestinians want you to come, but come with your own money, right? Come with your own engagement with Palestinians, not through Zionist organizations.
So, but I heard that the Muslim travel agencies like Darul Salam and all those, they pay to Israel to go into Palestine. So
No, you have to pay fees. That's not. We're not talking about the fees, right? If you travel, you have to have a visa. You have like entry. No. If you have to pay when you arrive in the country, there's fees at the airport, and so all those are fine. What we're talking about is that all your trip, many Muslims in here are given free, fully paid trip by these, especially MLI, Muslim Leadership Initiative, Shalom Hartman, where all your travel, your plane tickets, your stay, your tour, all is paid for. Not only that you have to pay the fees for visa and transportation and so on, that's a separate issue.
thank you.
Anyone?
خلاص
I thought we were going to set up suhoor. Come on, guys. No suhoor. Then I have to come back for next Ramadan. No, just.
Come back and have food.
Jazakum Allah khair. Thank you.
I just want to ask you, do you think that when you hold it, like you talk so much against Israel and so openly, so do you feel threatened by some way here?
I make my audience only one, and that's it. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا.
دكتور حاتم
جزاكم الله خير.
جزاك الله خير.
Oh, you didn't even say anything.
I know. Before I started,
You could come at
I'm suggesting for you.
Yes.
You know this 5 major groups.
Islamophobia, yeah.
Islam. I would like you to put the Arab one the first in the order, because they at this time they are really the worst, and they are the one who
we could
politically you could choose whatever you want to choose. But I think at this time they are the worst.
But I don't know. Again, it's a 6-tier. You could take your priority according to your particular way. But in terms of resources, Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
It's not a
جزاك الله خير دكتور حاتم. Extremely beneficial.
Their money is more, they're getting more money
We're
now.
doing closing dua with
More than the Jewish.
إن شاء الله. يلا السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام.
عند الدعاء عند أذان عند صلاة إن شاء الله. يلا سيء أمين أفضل الدعاء إن شاء الله. بسم الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا. اللهم تقبل يا رب منا هذا اللقاء واجعله في ميزان حسناتنا. تقبله من أخينا الدكتور يا رب حاتم. اللهم تقبله منا جميعا. اللهم يا ربنا اجعله منا لإخواننا في فلسطين وفي كل مكان صدقة منا يا رب ومساندة لهم على ما هم فيه. اللهم وفقنا يا رب إلى كل خير. اللهم احفظنا وأزواجنا وأولادنا من كل سوء. اللهم احفظنا في هذه البلاد ودبر لنا. اللهم احفظنا في هذه البلاد ودبر لنا. اللهم احفظنا في هذه البلاد ودبر لنا نحن وأزواجنا وأولادنا يا رب. اللهم ارزقنا وأولادنا الصحبة الصالحة وافتح لنا ولهم كل أبواب الخير واجعلنا سندا يا رب لكل خير يقام في هذه البلاد يا أكرم الأكرمين. اللهم آمين. Today inshallah activity for Palestine inshallah will be after few inshallah days we'll make inshallah activity for Kashmir inshallah. Kashmir inshallah. Dr. Mir and Dr. Shafiq inshallah organize everything بإذن الله تبارك وتعالى. جزاكم الله خيرا وبارك الله فيكم. إن شاء الله صلاة الأذان صلاة العشاء.